Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to podcast Awkward Outcast, crazy riddles, and all around nerds convene talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone, and good evening.
All right, there we go. All right, and I am your host, / timeline wannabe, the brainstorm of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing okay. Just now having realized I'm going to be busy for the next few days, but still okay.
Good. So we're gonna. I wouldn't say we have a packed week, but stuff came to light.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. I am a little tired.
Mm-hmm. What time did you go to bed versus what time did you wake up?
1 to 2 a.m. to 10, 11 a.m.
Okay, so you at least got enough sleep. It's not a sleep deprivation issue, then.
Right.
Because that's still a solid 8.5 hours.
I might have woken up a few times in between that. I'm not really sure. Sorry. So we are going to continue and hopefully finish the Verge article that we had started. If you want to see the first half of that, obviously check out Podcast of the Storm number 260. So yeah, this is the return of Gamergate is smaller and sadder by The Verge.
And yet you still are bitching about it. If it was that small and that pathetic, you wouldn't be moral panicking about it. You wouldn't be fear-mongering about it. You would just be laughing at it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not, because you know full well that, one, the ethos of the original Gamergate never really went away. It followed you all wherever your SJW nonsense proliferated, if I can speak today. And also that this particular iteration of it actually appears to be slightly more successful, if anything, than the previous one. So, oops.
The Neo Gamergate fervor surrounding Sweet Baby started with a Brazilian Steam user by the name of Cabrutus. In January, he created the Steam curation page called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, SBID, which the page's description explains is a tracker for games involved with Sweet Baby Inc. According to an interview with Cabrutis in Geeks and Gamers, he believes Sweet Baby is responsible for forcing political agendas and DEI, the abbreviation for diversity, equity, and inclusion, into their games.
Yes. They as much as admitted to doing exactly that. So present for me the lie. There is no hashtag misinformation in that statement. You just don't like that he defines that infiltration of DEI as a negative thing. But I will bet you every red cent I have to my name that if he was using Sweet Baby Ink Detected as a means to laud Sweet Baby Ink, to say that it was a good thing, not only would you not be fear-mongering about him, but you probably would be promoting him and offering him a job at whatsoever online news outlet could get him. Basically, if he was covering Sweet Baby Ink in a positive light, you would be lionizing him as a hero. The only thing you don't like is that his neutral exposure of Sweet Baby Ink leaves it open for the audience to make up their own goddamn minds. And it turns out that the audience, when given the opportunity to, with the use of a neutral record-keeping mechanism, to make up their own goddamn minds, have decided that they don't particularly want the machinations and meddling of Sweet Baby Ink in their IPs. Moving on.
Sorry. Cabrutis believes that any diverse characters or stories in Sweet Baby games are the result of its employees exerting pressure on developers to make additions or changes they may not otherwise make. I started noticing patterns in some games, like ugly women and male characters being weakened to make female ones look stronger, Cabrutis said in Geeks and Gamers. The game has brought his attention to Sweet Baby Inc. The game that brought his attention to Sweet Baby was God of War Ragnarok. I think anyone who played God of War 3 would find it really weird when Kratos decides to spare Thor and says, "We must be better." That simply didn't fit the character. Okay, well, that I will admit, that's where he's wrong.
What now?
He's complaining about God of War Ragnarok, Kratos having gone through an arc as a character. To compare the original God of War games where he's very brutal and stuff.
On the other hand, his arc could have easily gone the other way to be a more violent and tragic character, so I'm not familiar enough with the God of War franchise to claim whether or not that's incorrect or not. Also, keeping in mind that this guy is Brazilian, so English is probably not his first language.
I'm just saying, I think that was, to be fair, I do think that's somewhat of a cherry picking there. Not for Cabrutis, but for the article here.
Yeah.
A thing that he said.
Because
that is arguably
they probably picked his worst example to make fun of, to make him look like an idiot.
All right. Anything to say to any of that, or?
Again, I don't. Okay. The context of the complaint here is, once again, we're not saying that Sweet Baby Inc. forced these companies to do these things. In fact, they were invited in to do them. See, that's the thing. Sweet Baby Inc. is not being seen as a cause of this. They're being seen as a symptom of it. I.e., no one is claiming that Sweet Baby Inc. forces the ideology into these games, but the games in which these people are invited in to consult are likely to already be, in some sense, either in alignment with the ideology or desiring to get in line with the ideology. and the ideology that underpins the invitation in the first place and the consultant firm itself is the problem. No one is claiming that Sweet Baby Inc. is some kind of patient zero for this shit. As we have seen, this shit has been going on since the very earliest part of like 2013. And if you want to trace it back through its roots in academia, you're going to go all the way back to like 2009, 2010. No one is saying that Sweet Baby Inc. is the patient zero of this nonsense, but they are claiming that the presence of Sweet Baby Inc. is a indicator, is a litmus test for how ideologically converted is this company to have invited Sweet Baby Inc. in to consult. Which again, the fact that you even need a narrative consultant instead of just a writer like a normal goddamn person is in and of itself a sign that you're thinking in a very bureaucratic, very formalized manner that most people do not and have no respect for. Moving on.
Cabrutus believes that any diverse character stories in Sweet Baby games are the result of its employees.
You already read that.
Yeah, sorry. Got to scroll down a bit.
Mhm.
According to Cabrutus and the thousands of followers he's recruited through his Steam group and Discord server, developers have no choice but to make these woke narrative changes. SBID argues that game companies are forced to add wokeness to improve their ESG scores, measure environmental, social, and governance considerations if they want to land investors. SBID.
Okay. The only thing so far that he's wrong about is the word forced there. It's not forced, it's ideological co-option. It's not overt force, it's not a hostile takeover. It's a drip feeding of an ideological perspective. And once your work environment is lousy with this ideological preconception, it becomes very hard to see beyond it. And there itself in lies the problem. Moving on.
They want SBID supporters also argue that Sweet Baby has coerced developers into making changes through fear, pointing to out of context quotes from the company. The most widely circulated example involves clips of a talk Belair, a black woman, gave at the Game Developers Conference in 2019. In it, she counsels developers to terrify their bosses with the threat of cancellation if the requests for inclusivity are not met.
Okay, that's not in any way out of context. Even by your own admission, that is at least that particular woman doing exactly that. That is the social media mob of Sweet Baby Inc. going, if you don't institute these ideological axioms, we will tar and feather you in the court of public opinion. We will claim you as morally invalid or morally questionable, and then you will be blacklisted. That is basically what that is saying. That's not out of context. That is literally either her being taken word for word or you translating it. And even your translation is also suspect. Do you see? Do you understand the notion that in order to take something out of context, you have to actually meaningfully change the substance of what is said or the context of what is said? You can't call it being taken out of context when it is a direct quote or someone sympathetic to its extrapolation of that exact quote. In order to be taken out of context, you actually have to demonstrate how the context it is being used in is somehow different from the way it is actually, or the way it was actually intended or used, which you have not successfully managed to do.
Good to see a giant turtle.
Hey, DT.
Uh, but look, a look at the clip's full context tells a different story. It's clear that Bel Air didn't want developers to scare the superiors into inclusivity. Instead, she wanted them to enlist support from the employees, those on the marketing and community side, who stand to receive the most backlash from players if those concerns aren't taken seriously.
Do
And
you see how that doesn't actually meaningfully alter the context? That is that person saying, if you don't do what we want, we will use the ethos of informal power to turn your own company and employees against you, and or ruin you in the court of public opinion. This is once again the thing, and this is the soapbox that I've harped on ever since the start of this article. There is a fundamental difference between formal and informal power, between overt power and covert power. The problem is, while overt power is more strictly adhered to, it is also more strictly held accountable, i.e., because overt power or formal power is codified, it can also be more directly observed and held accountable. But covert, abstract power, on the other hand, by virtue of being covert, informal, and abstract, can be extremely pernicious because it doesn't contain things like a paper trail or a schedule of events, etc. Meaning that someone wielding abstract, informal, covert power can get away with a lot of cloak and daggery type shit and not be held accountable because it's not formally regulated in any way. Unlike overt power, which does tend to be formally regulated, at the very least by public opinion. That's why, for example, in the Middle Ages, when a king fucked up, his head would be in a basket somewhere, but his queen or his concubine could survive long enough to stoop the next guy and remain in the same state of informal power. Moving on.
but da, 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 da. And they do have the clip here, but because it is an archive, I don't think we could be able to see it.
No.
In reality, Sweet Baby and other video games consultants are contracted by the studios to support the studio's own goals. They consult, wrote Mary Kinney, the associate narrative director on the forthcoming Wolverine game from Insomniac Games, who worked with Sweet Baby on another Insomniac title, Marvel's Spider-Man 2. They do research, pitch ideas, give feedback, and maybe even write scripts, but none of that gets into the game unless the core dev team agrees with it.
Again, you're not helping your case, because no one is saying that Sweet Baby Inc. is patient zero of this ideology, or that they're using overt power to force feed this ideology. But what we're saying, what Cabrutus was saying with the instance of the Steam group of Sweet Baby Inc. detected, was that this is a sign that the original company has gone so ideologically foobar that they themselves will willingly reach out to Sweet Baby Inc. It's not that Sweet Baby Inc. is the epicenter of the problem, or the patient zero of the problem. It's that their presence is a red flag. It's the final sign that, okay, this company has been ideologically co-opted, and or its workplace is operating by ideological precepts. The ideological precepts are the problem, not Sweet Baby Inc., not the companies themselves. The fact that those companies have essentially bowed their head or bent the knee to the ideological preconception. The ideological preconception is the problem. The people enforcing it and or adhering to it are only incidentally the problem. Moving on.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll be brought in to just look at a project storyline to give feedback on it to find ways that it can be better, that it can better kind of align with the gameplay mechanic, Belair said. Kyle Rowley, a game director on Alan Wake 2, responded to a rumor on X that Sweet Baby Inc. was responsible for changing Saga Anderson, one of the game's main characters, from a white woman to a black woman. It's absolutely not true, he wrote. Okay?
Doesn't mean that ideology isn't the reasoning behind it. Again,
I'm going to be fully honest.
Sweet Baby Inc. is just the red flag or the litmus test. It's not the cause.
But I'm also going to be honest. I don't think, in the case for Alan Wake 2, I don't think that's any kind of fair assessment. Because from what I understand of the character of Saga Anderson, she's actually a really well written character and stuff. And I think the actress who was chosen to play it was just found a better fit for the character, I think.
Okay, but if the character was already pre-established as a white character, it is a little bit jarring for them to suddenly be race swapped.
To be fair, not in game. It was more like subsequent material of it was like pitch stuff, I guess would be the best way to say it. Like teasers and stuff, so.
Okay, but in any case, like if the character's original character concept was that of a white chick, unless there's some very pressing reason why they had to be race swapped, I don't see the reasoning behind the race swapping other than the ideological representation narrative. And as we already established, they actually don't particularly care about representation, because whenever a person of a given demographic disagrees with the ideology, they get called internalized hatred, blah, 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 meaning you have Stockholm Syndrome and you've been turned against your own kind, so your opinion doesn't matter.
I still don't think it's the case for. I still don't think it's the case for Saga Anderson.
Again, I don't know. I'm just leaving open the possibility that if that character was conceived of as a white character and was only changed for diversity credentials, that is a problem. I don't care how well written the character is. If the character was changed specifically to appease diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's not an in-universe reason. That's not a creative impulse. That is, we want to toe the moral line, and that's never a good reason to do anything. Anyway, moving on.
To date, Cabrutus's curation list features 16 games, including Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, and Sable. All the games on the list are marked all the games on the list are marked not recommended, a rating that has nothing to do with the game's perceived quality. One game on the list, Tales of Kinzera Zao, doesn't launch until April, but because of Sweet Baby Inc.'s involvement in the game's development, SBID serves as a warning to like-minded gamers not to buy anything on the list.
Again, if this person had been using this tool to recommend games instead of disrecommend them, you wouldn't have a problem with them. You would, in fact, treat them like a hero. The only problem you have is, one, he uses this tool to disconfirm a recommendation rather than endorse one, and two, large sums of people agree with him. Because here's the other thing. If this person wasn't speaking for a large percentage of the game of the gaming audience, you probably would never have even heard of them because they never would have gained enough traction to be on your radar. But you dislike the fact that one, someone can actively disagree with you, and two, large sums of people are agreeing with that disagreement. I.e., you are not liked, you are not welcome here, you are not wanted by a lot of the game's audience. And I'm sorry to burst this particular bubble here, but in the game of the market, in the game of capitalism, the audience opinion actually does matter more than the creator's opinion. Most of the time. Not saying the creator's opinion should never be taken into account, but when you want to sell your wares, it is rather important that you have someone to sell your wares to. Hence, it is important that someone somewhere likes your shit and likes it enough to make it fiscally viable. Moving on.
Right. All right. We're just tired of seeing people's creative visions being butchered in order to add something that's not even necessary or asked for, wrote Zaid Ninji, a moderator on the Discord server in a DM conversation.
Which is objectively true and perfectly sensible, frankly. I mean, you can say whatever you like about God of War, because again, I'm not as familiar with God of War or Kratos' arc in them to make an argument there. But you can certainly tell how this particular attitude was absolutely poisonous to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Mind you, it was one of the last games that Kevin Conroy voiced Batman for, and he had a pathetic death speech in game. Which the level of just sheer optics insensitivity there is frankly flabbergasting. You had Batman go out like a bitch in one of the last games that Kevin Conroy voiced him in after he died in real life. At what point did you think that was going to go over well? Moving on.
The reality is game development, especially AAA development, involves contributions from massive multiple disciplinary teams, and it's actually quite difficult to attribute any one element to an individual or specific team.
Yeah, but the fact that these companies are being run by as soulless bureaucracies might explain why the AAA industry is going down in a garbage fire, whereas the AA industry is slowly rising because it actually appears to be a viable playground for independent voices, not tethered to that bureaucratic nonsense. Did it ever occur to you that all of this extra dead weight in the creative process is probably why most video games are bullshit now? At least in the AAA space. For example, why is Helldivers or The Coffin of Andy and Lele so much more successful than Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League? Mind you, that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is based on DC Comics, which is an IP that has existed for 80 years and has, multi-million dollars worth of branding and fan loyalty pumped into the goddamn thing. And yet, something that comes out of nowhere and is basically a ripoff of Starship Troopers, cough cough Helldivers, manages to be far more successful and well liked by the fan base than Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Could it be that all of this extra dead weight you make up with, social justice narrative consultants might be actually hurting your brand and be a net loss for your company than just letting people be free thinking creatives? Just a thought. Maybe if you didn't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per game on narrative consultants, you might wind up with a game that is A, cost effective, or B, profitable because people like it. Moving on.
You wouldn't ask a programmer which part of this did you code, said Bedard. The whole thing is a team effort and only works because everything fits to the other parts really well. It is deeply ironic that one of the group's stated purpose is to rally against forced diversity in games when developers are often forced to make their games more homogeneous.
The difference there being, my dear, one of these entities is a narrative consultant company, which again, fuck your Orwellian newspeak, by the way, but one of these is a narrative consultant company hired from without by the company, and one of these is the audience who actually, keep your companies afloat. So, riddle me this. Which voice do you think it's more important to listen to? The customer base that actually keeps your jobs afloat financially, at least in theory, when they're being actually catered to, or B, a company whose existence is mostly secondary to anything meaningful and basically just exists to be an ideological and or moral censor. Because maybe I'm an old-fashioned fucker, but I've always been under the assumption that when your job is to create art for the mass market, for a large audience, for an audience of the plebs, you might want to pay more attention to what those audience members want and what the plebs think than what your academically endorsed moral betters think. But what the fuck do I know? Moving on.
Alright, I have never in my entire career seen anyone pressure a developer to make a character more queer or less white, wrote Christina Pollock, a veteran game designer. I have, however, seen many instances of developers being forced to change their characters to be straight and / or white.
Again, the difference being one of these is a academically endorsed top-down imposition on the company, and the other is your customer base asking for what they fucking want. And you and your ilk seem to think that the academically endorsed top-down management are the people you should be listening to. But again, in a sane world where people actually didn't despise the audience with a passion that burns with the wet hot intensity of 1,000 suns, you would realize that the people you should be catering to are the people who actually want, in theory, to purchase your IP. People who want to purchase your product, your service, your whatever. They are the people to whom you owe loyalty if you owe loyalty to anyone. Now, mind you, you could just as easily come back with the I don't owe loyalty to either of these positions, which I suppose that's an option. But what disturbs me here is that you are being saddled with two different and very much contradictory sets of loyalties. And you actually want to cater to the top-down, academically endorsed moral woo more than you do the people who fucking pay your salaries, in theory. Do you see how that's the wrong way around? Do you see how actually customers do have more justification for expecting their whims to be catered to than academically endorsed moral bureaucracies do? Because one of these is fundamental to the nature of the transaction, and one of these is entirely superfluous and, in fact, counterproductive to the transaction. Customers do deserve to get what they pay for, effectively. That's what I'm saying. And no amount of morally disparaging your customers is going to change that. If they are the people paying for shit, they expect to get their money's worth. And this should not be a controversial or immoral statement for me to make. But somehow in this current year it is. Moving on.
Many other developers echoed her sentiment. The anti-censorship crowd liked to argue that developers should be able to make the game they want without being told to make changes to please the market, wrote Gavin Young, a developer on Rainbow Six Mobile. Believe me, we're trying. We put diverse characters in games because they represent our teams and our friends. Another common refrain from members of SBI is that they actually don't care if a character comes from a marginalized background, so long as their identity isn't the sole focus of their characters.
Okay, yes, first of all. Second of all, backtrack to that because you strawmanned and misunderstood something. No one is saying that you shouldn't have to cater to the market because the market is how you function in this instance. People are saying you shouldn't warp the market or refuse to cater to the market on the basis of someone else's top-down moral restrictions, i.e., I think I speak for everyone when I say anyone who produces a publicly available product for, mass consumption should take their audience into account. And anyone that doesn't is a moron. What we're saying is what the fuck is with the extraneous bureaucratic nonsense? The moral and academic presuppositional nonsense. That's the difference. One of these is telling you to cater to your fucking audience, and the other is telling you to cater to abstract moral woo. And for some reason, given the choice, a lot of people in the modern day seem to want to cater to abstract moral woo over their own goddamn audience. And then here's the kicker. When that audience goes, well, clearly you don't want me, I'll just go spend my money somewhere else, like, for example, on Helldivers or the Coffin of Andy and Lele, you morally shame them for abandoning you when you're the one who told them, basically, to go fuck themselves. That's not how that works. You can't simultaneously say, I don't want the audience we currently have, I want a better one. And then when the audience you currently have goes, okay, I guess you won't be needing me anymore, you don't get to then morally shame them for leaving. The idea of a captive audience is bullshit. And I don't know where you got it in your head that you, by default, deserve people you don't morally approve of's money. Moving on.
Problem with that they include without giving some thought about SBID's Discord moderator, but they forget that the most important aspect.
Brainstormer, I think you might have frozen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay.
Now can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, now I can.
Alright. Okay, let me restart that then. My problem with most media nowadays is that they include Black or LGBTQ characters without giving some thoughts about them, wrote SBID's Discord moderator. But they forget the most important aspect of a character, their relatability and how they feel like a real person that you can meet in real life.
Yeah, fair enough. They treat characters as ideological or collectivist mouthpieces instead of individuals with their own individual characters. Moving on.
But the need for character depth is the exact reason why developers contract with Sweet Baby. Well, clearly Sweet Baby isn't doing their job right.
Yeah, no, they're not doing it right because of that aforementioned ideological presupposition. Namely, that identities or demographics are hive minds in some socio-political sense. So you can't just have a character who is an individual character who happens to be black. You have to have a character who is a stand-in for blackness or Asianness or gayness, or pick a diversity credential. This assumption that the like platonic oversoul of an identity is more important than the character's individual character or individual personality is in and of itself the problem. A problem that we didn't used to have, by the way, because I grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were diverse casts out the wazoo. Not only were there IPs that specifically focused on a particular race or gender or whatever, stuff like the Boondocks, stuff like Family Matters, The Proud Family, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, etc., or something like Jackie Chan Adventures for Asian representation, or Three Delivery also for Asian representation, and so on. El Tigre for Hispanic representation, etc. Not only were there instances like that where almost the entire cast was of a diverse background, quote unquote, there were also plenty of IPs that specifically had multi-demographic casts. Stuff like Captain Planet and the Planeteers, although that's a bad example because Captain Planet was never written well, but that's an example. Then you've got stuff like Codename Kids Next Door or Shaolin Showdown, and so on and so forth. At no point was number 5 from Codename Kids Next Door, for example, an avatar of blackness. She was an individual character. She was Abigail Lincoln. She was number 5. She was her own person as an individual and had individual qualities that individually made her interesting, compelling, relatable, likable, etc. And that is fundamentally what is missing in modern day writing. Characters are no longer allowed to be individuals when they're quote unquote diverse. They have to be the socio-political embodiment of the platonic oversoul of the identity that they're spawned from. I.e., you can't have a black character who doesn't waffle on about oppression or inner city violence or whatever anymore. You have to have them be an avatar of quote unquote blackness TM. And it's absolutely insufferable. Moving on.
Right. All right. For their work going to Bel-Air said we were specifically called to look at Saga's story, to look at how it's told, how the developers could better shore up aspects of herself, how her story reflects aspects of her identity, and essentially how to realize her as a fully human, fully authentic character.
Okay, that second to last thing there, that was your problem. A character's story shouldn't reflect their identity. Their identity should, in some sense, reflect their story, i.e., the things that make you an individual person are, at least in part, who you choose to be or how you choose to react to things, and or what formative life experiences you have, what interests you have, what skills you have, etc. To try to conform someone's story to their identity is literally almost the exact categorical opposite of what you should do. You should conform their identity to their story, not the other way around. Because who you are as an individual tends to be more important than who you are as an extension of a demographic. Do you see? Moving on.
The lack of understanding about game development, whether intentional or not, belies the group's true function. Sorry. A convenient,
No, it doesn't.
hold on. a convenient excuse for anti-woke reactionary gamers to indulge in racist and misogynistic behavior that's typically shunned in online communities. When I act racist, homophobic, or whatever, I feel free. One poster wrote in the Discord.
Okay, obviously they're making fun of your definition of those words, by the way. They're not actually saying they're actually those things. Because here's the thing, almost no one actually adheres to racism or homophobia anymore. Most people, at least since the 90s, have operated on the assumption that the kinds of like categories that you can group into demographics don't actually matter all that much, other than to occasionally act as a joke basis for a stereotype. Like, that's why the 90s were so focused on like demographic oriented humor. It wasn't because we took those things seriously, it was because we didn't, and we liked to mock the stupidity of hyperfixating on them. But this is the thing. You took someone's obvious attempt to take the piss out of you dead seriously because you simply do not understand how anyone could find anything to mock about your morally aggrandizing, self-serious ass. And I hate to break it to you, but just like we used to mock the fundamentalist Christians back in the 90s and early 2000s, now that you guys are the ones with the moral whip hand, you're the ones being mocked. And what that person was mocking in that particular instance was the fact that you use racist, sexist, etc. for literally everything to the point that it means nothing. To the point that it is basically the equivalent of the way that the tradcon evangelicals of yesteryear used to use the word sinner or fallen or worldly back in the day. It's just as overly pompous, overly self-serious, overly morally aggrandizing, and fundamentally meaningless to anyone that it gets applied to at this point. And we lost Brainstormer, so now we wait for him to come back. Waiting. And we don't have Dragon Turtle making periodic comments for me to respond to while we're waiting, unfortunately. Story short, it's been a hell of a week, and not quite over, including apparently the stream locking up. I'll catch what I can. Okay. That's okay. Sorry. Again, trying to read Dragon Turtle's comments to fill the void of waiting for Brainstormer to come back again. And we're still waiting on Brainstormer. I think his internet may have died. And unfortunately, I ranted my rant already. So we are waiting. On the waiting, on the waiting, on the waiting. And I don't know why I suddenly feel the desire to become all sorts of different accents all of a sudden. And yes, Dragon Turtle, we appear to be doing fine mostly. And we're still waiting on Brainstormer to come back again. Sorry, going through some of my notifications on my phone while we're waiting. Because they do have a tendency to get very clustered and you don't deal with them for very long periods of time. Okay, still waiting, I suppose. I think this is the longest he's been away for a long time while we were doing the stream. Did his entire modem crap out, I wonder? These are the questions. And of course my back is freaking killing me while this is happening too. Apologies for the dead air. I don't know exactly what to fill it with. I've been listening to a lot of Tom Lehner's parody songs recently, but I don't yet have them memorized enough to fill the dead air with them. And I would go to Text Brainstormer to see what indeed the fuck is up, but StreamYard would probably kick me out of the call if I did that, which would not be good for the audience. I don't even know how long the stream will keep going while I'm just sitting here, because he's technically the one hosting it. And these are the questions that we would have to. Everyone sings on a spring afternoon as we poison the pigeon. Every Sunday you'll see my sweetheart and me. We poison the pigeons in the park. When they see us coming, the birdies all thrive. But they still go for peanuts when coated with cyanide. Everyone seems alright. Then they sing with delight as we poison the pigeons in the park. Again, sorry. Like I said, I don't know the song well enough yet to sing it from memory. But trying to give you all the viewership's worth while we're waiting for him to come back. I'm going to try to text him and see what happens. We do that is, I suppose, the other question. Okay, I have returned. I have successfully texted him and it has not yeeted me from the call. Yay, StreamYard and my phone are not hating on one another for the foreseeable time being. While we wait for Brainstormer to come back and or text me back to see what the fuck happened. Because this is, I think, the longest one of these interruptions has ever gone for. Interestingly enough. Did his entire power go out? Because I don't know how to end the stream, because I am not technically the one hosting it. And I don't want... Okay, there he is.
I'm back.
What
Internet
happened?
crapped out. My internet crapped out. Like, okay, so we're having kind of a rain right now, though. Ours is
Hello?
just like a router. So, hello? Hello?
I'm not getting any audio from you, dude.
God damn it.
Unless it's me. Hang on. I will dip out and come back in and see if that helps.
Sorry to hear about that, Jonah. Hope you're okay. I hope everything's okay there.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Testing.
Hello?
Yes, now I can.
Okay.
Huzzah. Yes.
All right. Internet went out completely, like in my whole house.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured happened. Cause
Yeah, I won't call it a rainstorm, but it is raining here, though. Makes no sense why. Because it's not like raining hard or anything.
the eclipse is tomorrow. Maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe it's some kind of solar flare nonsense.
I
Who
don't know.
knows?
But also, Jonah said there was also hello, Jonah. Good to see you. There was a 4.8 earthquake yesterday that reached here in New York.
Ah, interesting.
I did hear. I think I heard about that.
I also heard about it, mostly on YouTube Shorts, making fun of it, kind of. But yeah.
Alright.
The world is ending. Won't it be interesting? Who knows? Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled podcast of the storm.
Yeah.
And
So, okay.
the rants that go along with it.
All right. Verge article. I just continue where we left off.
Yeah.
Okay. The arguments and discussions observed in Discord and on Steam all hearken to the reactionary right-wing movement that has dominated the political landscape since Barack Obama's presidency. Then, as now, hold on.
God.
Then, as now, many young white men have grown increasingly alienated from a world they feel has left them behind. I suppose the emphasis of white males in pop culture in favor of women, people of color, and queer people exacerbated this alienation, especially in video games.
Okay, one, many of the anti-SJW, anti-woke, anti-social justice people are of minority backgrounds. Quite a lot of them are annoyed because the academic preconception of their alleged demographic hive mind is bunk and doesn't represent them, and whenever they mention this to anyone, they get told something internalized self-hatred / Stockholm syndrome / you've been turned against your own kind and our class traitor, or something along those lines. And two, opposing social justice does not make you right-wing by definition. Thank you. Many of those of us who are opposed to social justice are just as left wing as the next fucker. We just are not in favor of the moralistic, authoritarian, censorious bullshit that is being spewed forth from academia thanks to the neo-Hegelian framework and or the quote-unquote critical theory that has been spawned by it. Just in the same vein as someone can be a libertarian right winger and not be fond of traditional family values, evangelical conservatism bullshit. You don't have to be opposed to someone's wing of politics to be opposed to the moralistic, censorious, authoritarian versions of it. For example, I supported Bernie Sanders in both previous election cycles where he was an eligible candidate, and my second and third choices in the most recent cycle were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. I am quite left-wing. I am a classically liberal in principle, social democrat in terms of policy. Doesn't make me right-wing to notice that all this neo-Hegelian gobbledygook, which is what it is. I'm not even going to call it Marxist because that's giving Marx way too much credit. And frankly, Marx was an unoriginal hack who took most everything he could from either directly from Hegel or from his inheritors in the neo-Hegelian movement. That's why I call it neo-Hegelian gobbledygook. But yeah, noticing that this neo-Hegelian gobbledygook is a deviation from classical liberalism or classical libertarianism does not make one right wing. You can oppose social justice from the left, just like you can oppose family values, tradcon bullshit, evangelical nonsense from the right if you're a libertarian right winger. And mostly, I want to point out that the anti woke movement is a very much across the aisle political movement where the most devout of the right wingers and the most libertarian minded of the left wingers can coexist perfectly well in opposition to social justice, just like they can exist perfectly well in opposition to family values, evangelical tradcon bullshit. Being opposed to authoritarian moralism does not make you opposed to the wing that moralism is found on. You could just universally oppose all authoritarian moralism because it's bullshit, no matter which wing it comes from at the time. Moving on.
Statistically, white men still dominate the video game space in terms of who is playing, making, starring, and writing about video games. But the landscape is changing. Companies are putting a greater effort in diversifying their games. Games media is more likely to call out when diversity is absent or done poorly, and the kinds of antisocial behaviors that were once the hallmark of gaming culture are becoming less and less tolerated. As a result, Cabrutus and his followers feel disenfranchised.
You don't have a monopoly on how to appropriately socialize, you cunts. And frankly, your authoritarian moralism is in and of itself very antisocial, very censorious, very anti-freedom of expression and freedom of association. And that bullshit right there is exactly the kind of bullshit that those of us who oppose social justice or critical theory or neo-Hegelianism are fucking sick of, especially when many of us get told you are academically obliged to conform to this ideology because we quote unquote represent you, so now be a human shield for our ideology. And speaking as a bisexual who mostly prefers men, who also is physically disabled, and is a practicing polytheistic occultist, no, you can take your I represent you, therefore you're now a human shield for my ideology bullshit, and shove it up your ass like a sharpened pole at the whim of Vlad the Impaler. Thanks. Moving on.
We're in an age where if you don't want to see a BLM or a pride flag in a game, you're a bigot, wrote a member in the Discord. Where if you care that the women in games have big tits while they are giant, muscular, shirtless dudes, you're a misogynist. In order to regain some semblance of control, the members of SBID have chosen to attack something that nearly represents their every grievance. A small company that specializes in improving in games narratives, staffed in part by women, queer people, and people of color. We'll have to make
And
sure people.
again, I hate to break it to you, but the opposition to that company also contains within it many queer people, people of various diverse racial backgrounds, and people of color. You don't have a monopoly on speaking for or with those identities. And that kind of academic ivory tower, we already presupposed your identitarian political prescriptions nonsense is exactly the fucking problem. When someone who happens to be gay or happens to be disabled or happens to be of a religious minority or happens to be of a different race or happens to be of a different gender or whatever you tells you that your academic preconception does not represent me, you don't listen. You instead have concocted this assumption of internalized self-hatred, whereby you can essentially accuse anyone of a demographic who disagrees with your ideological preconception of that demographic of having Stockholm syndrome and having been turned against their own kind, or of being some kind of class traitor to that identity. It's fucking bullshit. Moving on.
Alright, I'll have to make sure SpeedBay is actually dead before picking a new target to go after next, wrote a user on SBID's Steam forum. Based on the time I spent lurking in their Discord, it became clear these people actually aren't actually here to create meaningful change for their cause. Most are simply there for the vibes, rancid though they are. I'm just here because it's fun. Nothing's gonna happen. One user wrote in the Discord.
I hate to break it to you, but given that you and people like you literally identified themselves as journalists, a lot of the biased narrative you're getting about them might have just been people trolling you. Because people who oppose the establishment and oppose institutions and oppose the MSM don't particularly have a fondness for those things. So if you identify yourself as a games journalist, you're probably going to incentivize people to make fun of you, to mock you, and to troll you, so that you come away with a inaccurate perspective on that group. And it very much seems to me like it happened. Even the people who engage with you honestly, it seems, weren't accurately represented here, because you felt the need to concoct some kind of moral narrative whereby anyone who disagrees with your ideology must be morally invalid for some reason, rather than simply acknowledging the fact that your ideology does not contain everything under the sun and probably should not. Moving on.
There are lots of emotions and passion bottled up from being silenced for an extended period of time, wrote another member of the Discord. This movement is basically causing everyone to vent out their frustrations.
Yes, people are frustrated because when you tell them that you're not allowed to have your entertainment unless you agree with our worldview, people generally do get frustrated with you, especially when that ideology, when that worldview gets in the way of things like meritocracy and or equality, and or tries to convince people that meritocracy and or equality don't exist, and or that they are harmful delusions we must grow out of, quote unquote. Moving on.
Right. That doesn't mean the group is harmless. 10 years ago, Gamergate unleashed a wave of harassment targeting women, journalists, and people of color. It created the template for a kind of violent right-wing internet culture that persists to this day. And the guise of ethics in
Okay.
games journalism. So,
Okay, one, no. They criticized and argued with feminists, race grifters, and social justice ideologues. The fact that some of them were women or people of color had nothing to do with it, largely because, and then once again, it's still true today that you don't have to be right wing to oppose social justice, by the way, but especially back then, Gamergate by and large was a center left libertarian movement that opposed the infiltration of social justice or neo-Hegelianism into what was then a largely small L libertarian stroke liberal space. And more to the point, not only was Gamergate not right wing back then, but nothing that people said constituted harassment actually meaningfully constituted harassment, otherwise there would have been legal action around it. And also, has it ever occurred to you, okay, that your perspective might not be the only perspective in the universe? Moving on.
All right, where was this, as it was, allowed the movement to shield its true aims. Since SBID referred to itself as the second coming of Gamergate, it's important to apply the lessons not learned from the previous Gamergate and call this bigoted movement for what it is. Loudly and vociferously.
Vociferously is the word you're looking for.
Okay.
It means fervently. They just wanted to. They just wanted the extra few syllables, I'm sure, to make themselves look smarter.
Anything to say to that, Don?
Okay. Again, ethics in games journalism actually was Gamergate's quote-unquote true aim. You just don't like the fact that in order to reach that true aim, they had to thereby oppose social justice, because you presuppose that social justice is the way and the truth and the light and can do no wrong. But it is not true, just like it was not true in the 90s when people like Jack Thompson showed up and insisted on instituting TradCon evangelicals family values nonsense into gaming. Well, just like Jack Thompson and his ilk were morally censorious, overbearing authoritarian whack jobs, social justice and its adherents back in 2013 were also morally censorious authoritarian whack jobs and were being opposed basically on the same ground, just pointed in the opposite direction, because social justice was resulting in ideological nepotism towards feminists, racial identitarians, and etc., and the overarching movement referred to at the time as social justice. And it is that movement, those ideologies, that people oppose. Not the people, not the identities, not any of that. The fact that people were using those identities as human shields for their ideology was the thing that pissed people off. You don't like the fact that sometimes, in order to be ethical or to advocate for ethics, people have to oppose moral authoritarianism, be it from the Helen Lovejoys of the, TradCon family values evangelical wing, or the Karens and the Indy Sarkeesians and the Lacey Greens and the Zoe Quinns of the left wing moral authoritarianism, known at the time as social justice and now rebranded slightly as woke. Frankly, I liked the term social justice because I felt it was more descriptive of the problem, namely that they needed all of the public sphere to be morally adherent to their sense of justice, i.e. social justice. But I digress. I don't get a vote at what we call it. Whether you call it social justice or you call it woke or you do what I do and call it neo-Hegelianism because that's the most accurate and comprehensive description of the fucking thing. It's the same thing. It's just the left wing equivalent of what the right wing used to do with TradCon evangelical family values nonsense. And you don't like that some people are actually principled in their opposition to both of these things simultaneously. Moving on.
Diversity in video games isn't going anywhere, and the practice of hiring consultants to punch up narratives certainly isn't going to change. Improving diversity continues to be an animating force in the industry. Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony have made DEI a core part of their business, with commitments to diversify not only their workforces but their games as well.
And again, for as long as AAA gaming or quadruple A gaming tries to insist on ESG, DEI, social justice, and quote unquote wokeness, the more they will financially fail, and the more double A gaming, like Helldivers and the Coffin of Andy and Lele, and is it Starfield that's the new one? But yeah, that one. The more those type of games will be more successful than the AAA ones, because fundamentally the ethos that is piloting current AAA or quadruple A games is wrong. Social justice is just as wrong as family values TradCon bullshit used to be. Nobody likes a morally authoritarian censor in the public sphere. And the sooner you guys get over yourselves, just like the family values TradCons of yesteryear had to do, the better. Because moral authoritarianism is not welcome in the public sphere, especially not in the realms of entertainment. Get fucked. Thank you.
Right. All right. DEI is a moral necessity until the people making games are a decent approximation of the world they are making games for, wrote Sam Barlow, director of several award-winning games, including Immortality, Telling Lies, and Her Stories, games I've never heard of until this moment.
ESG and DEI are not representative of the world they are trying to be representative of. The only reason you can convince yourselves otherwise is because you've come up with this get out of accountability free card called internalized self-loathing or internalized self-hatred. The assumption that anyone of a given demographic who does not agree with the ideology you append to that demographic must secretly hate themselves and or have Stockholm syndrome and or be some kind of class traitor. The very notion that identities are or demographics are more representative of someone's individual identity than their individual qualities is a problem. And the more you insist on it, the more anything you touch, any institution you co-opt, any substrata you infiltrate will crash and burn, and alternatives to it will rise in opposition to you. The more you insist on games like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League or Forspoken, the more games like Helldivers and the Coffin of Andy and Lele will be more successful than you, and the triple A or quadruple A gaming companies will wonder what the fuck happened. Why are all these lesser companies being more successful than us? Simply because they don't like you, they don't want you, they don't need you, and they don't feel represented by you in any way. Your academic moral woo is no more representative now than it was when it first took root in Hegel's mind centuries ago. Fucking hate this nonsense, and the sooner it dies, the happier I will be. Moving on.
Right. SBID's champion of developer freedom and creativity fails to consider the possibility that the diversity they oppose might actually be what developers and gamers truly want. Okay, may I?
But they are the gamers, you see. They are the audience. They know what they want. They do not want you. They have told you explicitly they do not want you. Fuck off. And yet you consider yourselves morally better than them, so you insist on not listening to them when they tell you to fuck off. Moving on.
So, I
Unless you
guess.
had a thing.
Well, I was just gonna say, one kind of depends on how you define diversity, because we've had this discussion many times when it comes to that. Um,
Yeah, they seem to want every kind of identity, or what I call decal diversity,
mhm.
but they
Never diversity.
simultaneously want everyone to believe in the same ideology or framework or worldview, which
Yeah.
is fucking bullshit.
Um, again, if you want to make like for one thing, I mean, character creators are a thing, and often those who make those often make characters that look kind of like them. So,
Yeah.
uh, but my point
If you
being,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
Didn't mean to cut you off.
is that uh, it's like Don had said, decal. It never feels authentic, even and that I guess because again, I never really paid much attention to when this was really being a thing. Sweet Baby Inc. Um,
Hmm.
uh, but if you're supposed to be like a narrative consulting company, more or less, you're not doing a good job because it never feels genuine or authentic. If that is
Yeah,
like what you're really,
why aren't you ever focused on making the narrative better? Why are you always focused on identitarian presuppositions instead
well, okay,
of
that's what
making the
they're
narrative
preaching
better?
here. That's what they're preaching here in defense of themselves. But they've also mentioned that they're a narrative consulting company, right? Their job is to
Hmm.
make sure things feel are to input things that help feel it more authentic, more genuine, more real, right?
Yeah, and they suck
Issue.
at it because
Okay,
yeah.
don't. May I
Go ahead.
understand you've got a
Sorry.
lot to say. I'm just okay.
No, go ahead.
Um,
You haven't said anything in a while, so go ahead.
um, yeah, like clearly they're not good at their jobs because from the games I have watched or have seen, like clips and stuff of that, because I'll be honest, I've kind of fallen off gaming in recent years just because nothing seems good to me. But I do want stuff.
Which might, in and of itself, be a "there's your problem" type
Yeah,
moment.
there's a whole that's a whole other thing we're not going to get into because we'll be here longer than we need to be. But ultimately, the main issue is either their ideas, and they could have good ideas. I'm not going to deny that. Maybe they could have helped a lot with their thing, but and they were ignored blatantly because that was also mentioned that the companies, like the workers, have to take into account their ideas. However, if there are, that clearly they're misrepresenting, not misrepresenting, but clearly they either had just a first draft idea that they never fully developed, like redid to iron out some issues, or they are submitting this and everyone thinks it's a good idea, but when it's actually put into practice, it's shown
It's
both.
shit.
I was trying to be respectful. Uh, it's shown as both kind of flimsy and hollow. Um,
I'm sorry. My capacity to be respectful is thrown out the window usually when I get told, "Oh, you're not actually gay or disabled or anything. You have internalized self-hatred." Like that kind of "our ideology matters more than your actual perspective" bullshit. That 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 eats away at my ability to in any way be respectful or kind to these people. Because when you tell me that I'm right wing when I categorically am not, when you tell me that I'm racist or sexist when I categorically am not, when you assume that your ideology is the only means by which something can be more authentic when it categorically is not. There's only so many ways I can say "fuck you, you're wrong" politely, and eventually it does just devolve into "fuck you, you're wrong." usually after like spending 20 minutes explaining why in great detail you are wrong, because obviously the reason why you're wrong is always going to be more important than the fact that you're wrong, in my opinion. But yeah, my fuse gets rather short when people tell me that I am a subhuman, hateful monster, or that I have no idea how to be gay or crippled or of a religious minority when I categorically am those things. No, you can take your moral grandstanding and shove it up your ass at that point. Like, no. Anyway, did you have anything else to add?
No, not really.
Okay, then I will go on to my thing. One, the reason why you fail to be more authentic, or the reason why your company failed to do its mission statement of making stories more well-rounded and authentic, is because you presuppose that in order to be more authentic, you must view things through a social justice framework. It doesn't even ever occur to you that things outside of your moral framework can be relatable or authentic. And when you see categorical evidence that your ideology is not representative of reality, is not actually authentic, do you A, reevaluate your ideology and start over from scratch, or start over from a different perspective, or God forbid, ask for customer feedback for them to tell you what you did wrong? You presuppose that anyone who doesn't like it must be subhuman hateful monsters, because only subhuman hateful monsters would ever disagree with you. That's not intellectual or charitable or sane, or frankly even something worthy of discussion. If your only answer to people disagree with me is, oh, they must all just be hateful subhuman monsters who don't know anything and are ignorant and hate themselves and hate everyone else, clearly you don't understand anything. Secondly, the point about the game developers and how this might be what they want to make. Here's the thing. Here is the cold hard light of reality shining upon you. You ready? It doesn't matter what you want to make if no one wants to purchase it. It may well be what you want to make or what you as the artist want to do, but if you can't convince a sizable enough audience to keep you financially afloat that it is something they would like to purchase, it's not going to matter, because no one is going to remember your artwork in T-minus 5 seconds. In other words, maybe stop being egotistical little cunts who think that their artistic worldview can do no wrong, and consider that maybe your audience and the feedback of your audience, the feedback of your customer base, might indicate to you where you might need to improve your ideas a little bit. Because here's the sad truth about artistic vision. In terms of physical vision, when someone has bad physical vision, we send them to an eye doctor, where they get corrective lenses or LASIK surgery or contacts or whatso the fuck ever, but they get something to correct their vision. And here's the thing about artistic vision. At some point, we do actually need to conceive of the notion that just because someone has a quote-unquote artistic vision doesn't mean their vision is any good. I.e., just like you go to an eye doctor to double check that your vision is functioning properly, on occasion, maybe you should ask yourself whether that artistic vision you're seeing is actually relating to anything meaningful. I.e., just because you have an artistic vision doesn't necessitate that that vision is any good. And if you don't allow anyone to point out the notion of quality to you, don't allow your audience to point out when your ideas aren't any good, or worse yet, if you go with the everything is subjective, so there is no such thing as good or bad art perspective, then all you'll ever do is fail and fail and fail and fail. Whether you fail upward or fail downward because someone nepotistically wants you involved somehow still is a different matter. But when did it become rude to say that if your physical vision is bad, we send you to an eye doctor? When your artistic vision is bad, sometimes you should seek a second opinion to see if there's something you're not seeing correctly. Maybe your artistic vision should occasionally be subject to a standard of quality or meritocracy. And if you find it morally offensive to even consider the notion of quality or meritocracy, then I'm sorry, the problem is you. Just like the problem would be with the person if you suggested to them, hey, your vision is obviously bad, maybe we should send you to an eye doctor, and they said, I don't ideologically believe in eye doctors, so don't ever tell me my vision is bad. Vision is just subjective. If someone actually for real did that in real life, you would look at them like they were a crazy person. And yet when someone says maybe your artistic vision isn't always the most worthy thing in the universe, then you get offended. I don't understand, like, where is the differentiation you're making there?
Moving on.
Moving on.
SBI. Oh, I read that. It's the reason studios hire companies like Spree Baby in the first place. So it cut off in the middle of that. And while this movement matters to Sweet Baby employees because of the harassment they're receiving, in the larger context of the video game industry, it seems to be quickly fizzling out. Steam has apparently taken some action against SBID as of publication. The vast majority of SBID, the Steam discussion forum, 100 pages worth of threads, have been deleted, and existing threads are currently locked.
Actually, no. Since this article has been published, it's not the case. Steam investigated Sweet Baby Inc. detected and found nothing wrong with it, which I'm sure must make you butthurt as hell. But yeah, no, you don't have the moral high ground, and that is fundamentally the biggest problem with this entire thing. If your reaction to any criticism whatsoever, any contrary opinion whatsoever, is fuck you, I don't have to listen to you because I have the moral high ground, you had better hope that you actually objectively have the moral high ground. Because wouldn't it be tragic if, for example, you claimed the authority of the moral high ground while not having any such thing? And that's the thing. Most of the arguments made by these kind of journalists, most of the arguments made by these kind of people, are fundamentally about, I declare you to be morally invalid because I am the arbiter of what morality is. Which, one, that's a terrible way to argue for anything ever anyway. But two, when you are proclaiming from on high that you have the moral high ground, chances are you actually don't. Because the moral high ground tends to come from below, tends to come from the plebs, tends to come from the people who don't have the money and the power and the clout and the pomp and circumstance. The people who morally lecture those beneath them don't tend to actually have the moral high ground. The people who generally have the moral high ground are the people who come from below to challenge that moral authority. Because moral authority in and of itself should frankly not even be a thing. Because the second you have to defer to your authority or your moral abstraction in order to make your argument work, that's basically an admission that you don't have any substantive argument. You don't have any substantive counter argument. You don't have any substantive reasoning. You just have moral grandstanding. At which point you basically failed. Moving on.
Meanwhile, Sweet Baby's clients are sticking with the company. The studios that we're currently working with have reached out and offered their support, saying like, "Hey, we see what's happening online, and just know we stand with you," said Chris Kindred, a narrative designer at Sweet Baby. In an email to The Verge, Gregorios Kithori, Kithor, Kithorius, no, I don't fucking know. Creative director of Sable wrote, "Sweet Baby was lovely to work with, extremely professional and easygoing. They respected our creative direction, and it was a really great experience. We're really grateful to them." Mary Kinney, who worked with Sweet Baby on Spider-Man 2, called them one of the finest in the biz. "I'm so lucky to have worked with that team. I hope to do so again," she posted on X. "I hope asshats don't drive out some of the most talented, passionate people we've got."
Okay, here's the thing. All of that you're not winning, we're still here nonsense doesn't really matter. You want to know why? Because the people you hate, the people you just alienated, are what's known as your goddamn customer base, you idiots. By which I mean, it doesn't matter how secure you or the industry feels right now, because the industry is goddamn losing money over this shit. So it doesn't matter how secure your job is in a dying industry. It doesn't matter how many companies rail against their own fan bases to support you, because all that's probably going to result in is those games that you worked on losing money, and eventually you lose money, and eventually the triple A gaming companies or the quadruple A gaming companies end up losing money. And who wins? Where does all that money and support and fandom go? To those projects that you morally don't like The Coffin of Andy and Lele, or Helldivers, or um, Nikke, or Starfield, or all those games that you think are morally reprehensible because they cater to the wrong audience will still succeed because at the end of the day, they like and want to engage with their audience, whereas all you want to do is morally shame them into going the fuck away. And when your entire business model is basically predicated on morally shaming your audience into going the fuck away, don't be surprised when eventually they just do and find an alternative to you. And no amount of morally grandstanding over how bad that alternative is going to change the fact that it is successful while you are not. I.e., no amount of sentimentally licking your own wounds is going to prevent you from bleeding to death if those wounds are still open and bleeding, especially not if you dig them deeper and wider all the time, which is essentially what you're doing by alienating your core audience. Telling your audience that they are immoral and need to go fuck themselves is only going to make them go find some alternative to you, which is then going to be more successful than you, and you are eventually going to flounder and die. So no amount of being self-assured is going to save you when the financial consequences of your own decisions end up biting you in the ass. And isn't that fun? Moving on.
Alright. So Dawn literally sent this to me earlier this morning.
Mm-hmm. I tried looking for the primary sources, but probably because of the lawsuit, they got taken down. So
Right.
I went with the next best thing.
Alright, so this is from originally from BountyIntoComics.com. Written by Spencer Bakuli. Bakuli. If I say the name wrong, I'm sorry. And this was published originally March 27th, 2024. Black Girl Gamers announced legal action against entertainment news outlet that Park Place over recent reports suggesting video game diversity consulting company engages in discriminatory hiring practices.
Hmm. In case the name Black Girl Gamers didn't tip you off, they tend to only hire black girl gamers, which is discriminatory because you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, gender, race, etc.
Mm. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. In the latest escalation of the ongoing Sweet Baby Inc. Discord, video game diversity consultation company Black Gamer Girls has announced their intent to seek legal action against entertainment news outlet That Park Place over a recent report alleging that they engage in racially discriminatory hiring practices. Disclaimer: this article's author holds a personal friendship with a number of That Park Place staff members and contributors.
Okay, well,
Okay.
at least he acknowledged the bias, but good for him.
This latest development was kicked off when, on March 15th, That Park Place editor-in-chief John F. Trent published a report entitled "Forspoken Consultant Black Girl Gamers appears to discriminate in their hiring practices while claiming they are being harassed." Okay.
Yeah, if I had a penny for every time that happened. They did something overtly obnoxious and or abrasive, and then when they got any sort of criticism for it, they claim it as harassment.
In support of his headline suggestion, Trent cited a Seoul February 2024 tweet wherein Black Girl Gamers put out a public call for Black women content creators that make Dungeons and Dragons content for some potential brand work.
Yeah, again, you can't discriminate on the basis of race or gender. Meaning you literally can't say we're only looking for black girls. And yet their entire company is basically based around that concept. In the same way as you couldn't put out a hiring notice saying we're only looking for white men, because that would also be racist and sexist.
Addressing the Girl Games took their official company Twitter account on March 27th to declare, "We're addressing the recent allegations published on thatparkplace.com about discriminatory hiring practices within Black Girl Gamers. These claims are false and were made without prior fact-checking or verification from us or our representatives." I mean, okay, that...
Present your evidence, because you're literally called Black Girl Gamers, and it says on your website that you pride yourselves on being an entirely black, entirely people of color female space. So again, you're gonna have to do a lot of dancing to convince me that you're not, because here's the thing: either you were lying when you made that tweet, and you're lying on your own homepage, or you're lying now. And given that your company is literally called Black Girl Gamers, and one of its selling points is that you're staffed entirely by female people of color, I'm gonna have to believe that you actually do mean it when you say you're only looking for black women, which is sexist and racist by definition. If you avoid hiring all other applicants.
Black Girl Gamers operates as a contracting organization that collaborates with both freelancers and content creators from all backgrounds to work on various projects and initiatives to amplify underrepresented voices in gaming and make the community more inclusive, they continued.
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that. The very fact that you admitted that the only people who aren't black and female that you work with are freelancers and consultants from other companies means that your main company probably doesn't contain any of those. It in the same way that if a college said we only allow for people of this background to take on unpaid internships, that would also be a possible sign of discrimination. Because if you didn't discriminate, they wouldn't be consultants or freelancers, they would just be part of your staff. But you didn't say that. You said, we work with people of all backgrounds as consultants or freelancers, meaning we don't hire them as permanent positions in the company, which is a self-report. It's you telling on yourself there.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Contrary to the allegations in the article, Black Girl Gamers, has contracted freelancers of all races, genders, sexual orientations, religions, and ethnic backgrounds. Black Girl Gamers next stated, okay.
Have you hired any of them to work for your main company, or have they all been quote unquote freelancers and consultants? Have they been basically the equivalent of unpaid interns this entire time, or did you ever actually hire any one of them? Because that's the core of the accusation. The core of the accusation is you only ever allow people of other backgrounds to act as freelancers or interns or consultants. You never actually hire them as part of your main company.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
All right. We have also included representation of all genders and backgrounds in our content at our events and in our marketing, consultation, and research projects, some of which are not publicly disclosed due to NDAs, added the company.
But once again, the core of the question is not whether you hire those people as consultants or interns or freelancers, but whether they actually get hired as part of your core company. Not we need them for this one side project we're doing, but literally, do you have any of them on staff? If the answer is no, then the allegations are not false, because for exactly the same reason as if, for example, Chick-fil-A said something to the effect of, we are a fundamentally Christian company and we are proud to have Christians on our entirely constituting our staff, and then you called them on it and they said, well, we work with non-Christians sometimes as freelancers, interns, etc. That wouldn't get them out of it. That would still make them look like Christian supremacists, wouldn't it? It would make them look like someone who had the Christian equivalent of a house N-word, wouldn't it? Well, it looks just as suspicious and discriminatory when you say, no, we do work with people of all backgrounds as interns and freelancers and consultants and stuff. We just don't hire any of them for our core company. Do you see how that works? Do you see how that basically codifies that those people within your company have basically second-class citizenship and are not technically fully employed by your company? Moving on.
All right. To this end, they alleged evidence demonstrating our commitment to diversify in conclusion, including our non-discriminatory hiring practices, is readily available and easily searchable, though they did not provide any specific links or references as to where individuals could find this information.
So, we totally don't discriminate. Where's your evidence? Oh, we don't have a. Okay. That's a choice.
Moving on.
Hmm.
At this point, Black Girl Gamers then ultimately announced that upon discovering these false and defamatory allegations, we have taken steps to obtain legal counsel to take action against the publication and journalism, as well as journalists, not sorry, publication and journalists, as well as subsequent content creators who have reshared the false allegations about our organization.
Again, all you've said in your own statement is that you relegate people of other backgrounds to the status of interns, consultants, and freelancers while priding yourselves on being an entirely black female led or entirely people of color female led company. Which means either your PR statement here is false or your claim on the website that you pride yourself on, the fact that you pride yourself on being entirely black and female led, is wrong. So which is it? Are you lying now, or were you lying previously when you claimed that your company was entirely black and female led? You can't have it both ways. Either admit that even your own admission basically admitted that you use people of other backgrounds as second-class citizens in your company and don't ever actually extend them full employment benefits, or admit that your PR statement of being an entirely black female-led company is wrong. Either way, you are dishonest liars. You're either lying now or you're lying then. You're lying on your public website. One of these must be the case. The only question is, which is the lie? Are you lying now, or were you lying when you soaked up all the BLM brownie points for being entirely black female led? Either way, you're disingenuous liars, and that Park Place seems to have a pretty solid case against you, in my opinion. But oh well. We will literally let the courts decide on this one. I suspect that you're going to be disappointed when the lawsuit ends up going the plaintiff's way rather than the defendant's way on this one. Or would it be the other way around because they're the ones who? But when that Park Place winds up being the beneficiary of the lawsuit, I think you will be unfortunately surprised. And we will all laugh at you. Yeah, moving on.
We will continue to pursue further action against anyone who persists in spreading false and defamatory information about Black Girl Gamers, its founders, and its contractors and partners of the company.
Again, contractors and partners, especially the freelance kind, are not technically full-fledged employers of your company. Hence, it would be true to say that you prioritize hiring black female or people of or POC female persons and relegate anyone of other backgrounds to a secondary position that is not full employment, which would be you discriminating, just as discriminatory if this was back in the 1950s and some, fat cat billionaire from the 1950s said, "Oh yeah, we have black people on staff as freelancers and contractors. We just don't have any of them in the core of our company." Do you see how discriminatory that would sound? Moving on.
We value the talent and contributions of all our collaborators, and we are committed to continuing to do so. Thank you to our community for the ongoing support, they concluded.
We just don't hire them seems to be the part she's not saying there. Like, we value the contributions of all of these people. We just don't hire them.
Well,
Yeah, moving on.
addressing the legal threat in his own coverage of its announcement, Trent provided a disclaimer asserting that Park Place has written about this public interest story involving public entities as part of good faith journalistic efforts. That Park Place, at time of publication and to the best of our knowledge, has never received any request for edit, redaction, modification, or deletion of articles mentioned in this piece. We strive for accuracy within our coverage, even when we are opining in public appearance perceptions.
Okay, so not only did um not only did this lawsuit come out of the fact that apparently the people running that company think that we hire consultants and freelancers counts as disproving the claim, but also they didn't even have a strong enough case to get a warrant for the original piece to be redacted. I assume that Park Place just did it so that they don't get in trouble for publicly talking about a case they're currently undergoing, and will probably reinstate the original once the lawsuit's over. Because that's the thing. Um you're not really supposed to talk about court proceedings when they're ongoing. You're only allowed to talk about them afterwards. So we'll see, I suppose, when this finally goes to court, who is right and who is wrong. By my estimation or my reading of it, though, I suspect it will end up coming down in favor of that Park Place and against Black Girl Gamers, because their only their only argument against that Park Place is basically, oh no, we keep people of all backgrounds as consultants, freelancers, and interns. We just don't hire any of them for long-term employment, which is not a refutation of being racist or sexist in this way. That's that's basically the I have black friends of legal defenses, or in this case, I suppose I have white friends of legal defenses.
Anyway, moving on.
Hmm.
Well, that was the end of the
Moving,
articles. We're going to move
yeah.
on to the stuff that I uh, sent.
Yep.
First is an article, surprisingly.
Hmm.
This is originally from Variety.com, written by Todd Spangler, published March 28th, 2024.
Hmm.
Red vs. Blue, final season to be released as feature-length movie after Rooster Teeth shut down by Warner Brothers Discovery.
Hmm.
Obviously, for anyone who is in the know, and I kind of wish Jonah and Dragon Turtle were here.
Hmm.
Yeah, so obviously Red vs. Blue is one of the longest and was a flagship title of Rooster Teeth, the company, and is the longest running web series.
Hmm.
It started in 2003, April 1st.
Ah, I was gonna say, because I would have thought like the AVGN would have had them beat, but no, I guess he started in like 2006, 2007, so that does make sense.
Yeah. Rooster Teeth co-founder Bernie Burns returned after hiatus to script sci-fi comedy series last installment.
Hmm.
So obviously, and I've made my vocal point about this before, is Rooster Teeth kind of went downhill after a while. After like it was in a golden age around the early 2010s, of sorts.
Hmm.
And then after several factors, and I'm not going to name a lot of them, but it started to lack both in quality and in creativity behind the scenes.
If I had a penny for every early internet trend or fad or IP that started in the early 2000s and like crashed and burned after the mid 2010s, I would have a lot of money. 'Cause a
Right.
lot of things from that era seem to have developed seem to have crashed and burned slowly. Some are still going. Like I think Linkara is still going, and I know Channel Awesome has basically just become a Nostalgia Critic solo brand now. Um, and I think that some of the old that guy with the glasses contributors are still kind of doing their own thing. I know Brad Jones is still doing like Stone Gremlin productions and occasionally doing Cinema Snob episodes, but it's nowhere near the complex and intricate like crossover world that was the reviewer sphere of the early 2000s through the early 2010s.
Yeah. uh, so the battling factions of Red versus Blue are getting one last adventure in which they must team up to fight a common enemy that will soon be available on a screen near you, even though Rooster Teeth is closing its doors.
Hmm.
Red vs. Blue Restoration, the 19th and final season of Rooster Teeth's groundbreaking comedy sci-fi series, will be available starting May 7th in its entirety as an 87-minute feature-length film by Warner Bros. Discovery Home Entertainment.
Hmm. You know,
Uh,
interesting fact, in the 2019 movie Doctor Sleep, the character of Abra was apparently a really big Rooster Teeth fan because there was a bunch of Rooster Teeth merchandise in her bedroom in that
huh.
movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool. To be fair, I mean, even in Ready Player one of their other flagship titles, Ruby had a cameo in there in like the background of the final battle.
They did.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Shame Rooster Teeth never really.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, good for Warner Brothers trying to do the whole synergy branding thing.
Yeah. Um. Oh, and for those who are unaware, Red vs. Blue, it was kind of one of the first things that ever did machine. One of the first ever like shows or something you could say did machinima, which was using a video game as a filmmaking thing. Um,
Mm.
uh, though I will say it is somewhat sad that they're doing it in May and obviously it come out on the first, like the anniversary of Red versus Blue.
Yeah, that'd be nice if they had lined up, but I mean
Yeah.
that just goes to show how off tempo Rooster Teeth had become at that point.
Mm. Uh, the movie will be available on May 7th to purchase for $14.99 from Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, Vudu, and other electronic sell-through outlets. Oh, okay, so I might be able to
Mm.
actually see it. We might actually do a real review of that.
Yeah, I'll have to. I guess I'll have to watch it too.
Well, and available May 21st to rent digitally for $4.99.
I'm
Um,
curious if it's going to get an actual physical release.
Probably. I mean, it's done that with the other seasons, and I'm also not like the movie thing, like making it. They did that with the DVD releases too. Like you could watch it in like a full movie.
Mm.
So
I know.
like,
I know. One of the things I'm getting you for Christmas this year, then.
good luck trying to find Red versus Blue box sets.
Well, if not that, at least Ruby. But we shall see.
That's fine. I'm fine. That's because I saw all that stuff coming out when it was going on to YouTube, and I'm sure there are people uploading on YouTube anyway. So
Yeah. But physical media can never be taken away from you is the thing.
fair.
That there's a reason like a third of all of my Christmas lists always have movies and TV show box sets and stuff on them because I dread the day when streaming goes the way of the dodo or there's some kind of mass deletion of large parts of the internet and then all of a sudden all of my favorite media just disappears and becomes
Disappears.
inaccessible.
Yeah.
So yeah, physical media forever.
And for the record, just if you're getting Ruby, seasons 1 to 3 or volume 1 to 3, and Red versus Blue 1 to 13.
Because afterwards it goes down. Yeah. Okay. Noted.
WBDHE also released a teaser trailer for the forthcoming movie, which we will watch after this article.
Mm-hmm.
Per the official synopsis, when the universe's greatest villain returns in a terrifying new form, old adversaries, the Reds and Blues of Blood Gulch, will have to set aside their differences to save the galaxy one last time. To be fair, they haven't really been adversaries for a long time. I mean, they annoyed each other. You know, it's basically like how you picture like the stereotypical tropey family dynamic, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
They annoy the shit out of each other, but the guy each other's back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess also the interesting thing is to mention that they are basically retconning the last few seasons since season 14, which was like an anthology season because they were trying something different after the end of season 13. Then season 15 to it was
as long as the retcon makes it better, I suppose.
Well, the season they're retconning the seasons of season like 15, 16, 17, and 18 because they were not met with they were kind of crap. Like the three like season 15, 16, and 17, those were a trilogy that kind of escalated to the point where you had these characters fighting gods. That also turned out to be AI. Shut up. I know you're not going to like that. Then also time travel and stuff. It was a whole thing. There were some elements in there that were good and interesting. Never really developed or anything. But and then
again, if I had a penny.
Yeah. And then season 18, which was Red versus Blue 0, which introduced a whole new cast, which I would have been fine with. I would have been fine with because honestly, season 13, kind of the story of the Reds and Blues were kind of not done, but at the very least, it ended on a note of like these characters kind of finally finding their place. Yeah, their piece, their place. I mean, it ended on a cliffhanger of do they survive or do they not? But it ended in a way that I think was satisfying.
Would have been a sufficient like series finale kind of thing.
It's like a Butch and Sundance moment, if you get that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they died, maybe they're not. Again, it was a whole thing. But I get why they're retconning it, and honestly, it's fine. I just again I'll talk about this more as we go into the trailer, but I personally would have been fine exploring more of the universe because they had a lot of interesting ideas about how like there were certain different people and stuff it's like a Star Wars thing of like other people's stories interconnecting with the Reds and Blues and stuff, and how they pass through each other and stuff all
Mhm.
that. I thought it was cool.
Yep. You can never beat good world building. It's one of the things I miss most about the old school Channel Awesome days, because all of these people were like crossing over and informing each other's mythoses. It led to this really big, um, complex for a given value of complex bit of world building. Mostly done, it must be said, by Linkara, because he seems to be the one that ran the most with the like conceit of the reviewers getting basically meta magic powers, um, with the possible exception of maybe the Blockbuster Buster and Diamanda Hagen. They also kind of ran with it too, but
Mm.
yeah, they don't run with it quite so much anymore. Although Linkara has finally started doing storylines again, and I'm excited. For a while there during COVID, he was stalled in being able to do storylines, and I'm glad he's able to do storylines again. I like the storylines. And
uh,
apparently that makes me Iceberg, but so be it.
the move comes in the wake of the decision by Warner Bros. Discovery, Rooster Teeth's most recent corporate parent, earlier this month to shut down the money-losing entertainment division, throwing RT's employees and contributors out of work. To be fair, it's kind of been like that for a few years now.
Hmm.
Warner Bros. Discovery is looking to sell the catalog and intellectual property rights of Red vs. Blue, along with a handful of other popular Rooster Teeth productions like RWBY and Genlock. Did not know they were selling Red vs. Blue. I heard about RWBY and Genlock, but that makes sense, yeah.
Hmm.
Um, for the final chapter of Red vs. Blue, series co-creator and RT co-founder Bernie Burns returned after a 4-year hiatus to pen the script, reuniting with director Matt Hullum to bring closure to the narrative that has spanned more than 2 decades.
Wait, that's actually his name, Bernie Burns.
I think so, yeah.
That's kind of awesome. That's some superhero naming convention type shit. That's cool.
Either that or his full name, like Bernie, I think it might be short for something, but
Right, but that's still like that's kind of awesome. I props for his parents, probably, if they actually named him that, or Bernard or something that he could have
yeah.
turned into Bernie. But still, that's some superhero naming convention type shit. I approve.
Right. I'm thrilled to return for Red vs. Blue restoration and to conclude this incredible 21-year journey with our longtime fans. Um, I'm not sure if I'd call myself a longtime fan because I got into when Monty started doing the fight action animations, like
Mm,
when they started to get more into serious storytelling than just random events and stuff.
mm-hmm.
Then I binged the whole series within a year or so up
Yeah.
until that point. Um, but Burns said in a statement, Hullum added, Red vs. Blue has been a cornerstone of Rooster Teeth's legacy, and we're immensely proud of what we've accomplished together. Red vs. Blue is set in the universe of Xbox's Halo game franchise, in which two teams, Red and Blue, engage in perpetual conflict in a desolate canyon. Led by the bumbling Sarge and the cynical Church, the soldiers navigate absurd situations with misunderstandings with a absurd situations and misunderstandings with a mix of humor and sci-fi elements.
Mm.
I mean, to be fair, that was like the first 5 seasons of the show, and then it started to get more into like complex stuff and a little more emotional and serious, which is where I kind of started to get onto it. Obviously, I'm not saying the
Neat.
first 5
Yeah.
seasons were bad. Obviously, it's just if and it had good and
Yeah.
it's not
As
bad.
a similar thing kind of happened too with the Channel Awesome mythos, or the that guy with the glasses mythos. Originally, a lot of the reviewer gets meta powers subplots were just for gags, um, and then uh, it started kind of with the Channel Awesome anniversary specials. They started kind of building more complex and more intricate world building, and then, like I say, people like Linkara and the Blockbuster Buster, and to some extent Diamanda Hagen, kind of took that ball and ran with it. And I think probably it's a coin flip as to whether the Blockbuster Buster or Linkara added the most to the Channel Awesome mythos outside of the anniversary specials, but that is also kind of how that lore evolved into actual lore. They took the meta powers they had for the sake of gags, and it just started to actually run with them. It was cool. I'm glad Linkara is back to doing storyline segments, because I missed the storyline segments. Anyway, moving on.
The show debuted in 2003 before YouTube launched. And to be fair, they even mentioned that they didn't get onto YouTube until a few years after it started because they didn't think it was going to go anywhere.
Well, hindsight is 2020, I suppose.
I mean, to be fair, it's like they'd started this in 2003. YouTube began in 2005. And back then, YouTube wasn't used for much in terms of like storytelling purposes.
Yeah,
I
it
well,
was.
again, they could have.
It wasn't really. It wasn't really an established thing until people like James Rolfe started doing like the Angry Video Game Nerd and stuff like that. And even
Yeah,
then,
so
for most of the like latter 2000s and into the early 2010s, YouTube kind of hated the guts of reviewers, and they all had to exodus to Blip.tv.
so yeah,
And
I can understand.
only after Blip TV kind of went the way of the dodo did they all come back to YouTube proper.
Mhm. So again, I can understand them, though. Again, given that they were in this kind of like gray area of like they could be kind of the big industry while also being independent.
Hmm.
If they had cornerstoned YouTube at the time, really could have set them up for a lot of things, you know.
Well, I mean that's also true of like the reviewer sphere.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Again,
again,
it's it's just
YouTube
like
kind of
you're just right.
YouTube
You're
hated a
right.
lot of people's guts back then, so
Yeah,
they
you're
couldn't
right.
really.
But you are right, though. You know, hindsight's 2020, obviously. Um,
Hmm.
Red vs. Blue, in addition to establishing a popular digitally distributed entertainment franchise before the streaming revolution, was innovative in using machinima to create animations using video game engines. Yeah, scenes. Red vs. Blue
Hmm.
Restoration was produced with Epic Games' Unreal Engine.
Hmm. Did
All right, give me one.
How long have they been using that, or is that a relatively recent phenomenon that they've been using the Unreal
Relatively
Engine?
recent
Because I just
thing. I think relatively recent for the Unreal Engine thing. They used 3D animation before, but that was it was a different type of animation one. It was one that Monty Oum was more used to using.
ah, I was gonna say because I didn't think the Unreal Engine was as old as Red versus Blue.
Oh no, Red vs. Blue only started using animations relatively to like maybe er, late 2000s, early 2010,
Ah,
or not late 2010, but you know what I mean, right?
hmm, yeah, but that's interesting because I mean, if it started in 2003 and it's just now kind of wrapping up now, that's a pretty freaking impressive run. That's more than that's more than 20 years.
Yep.
Mm.
Like I said, longest running. Oh,
Hmm. Anyway, shall we go to the trailer? I don't know if there are any red versus blue related foodstuffs to
uh,
the pause phrase.
I mean, there's a guy who's like super fat, but he'll eat anything really.
Mm.
Well, there's I mean, there are things we can say that would make sense, though they're not food related.
So I guess just ordinary banana for this one.
I mean, we could go shizno. Hold on, let me.
I'm out of the loop on the reference. You're gonna have to explain it to me.
Oh, it's an insult that the aliens use to call humans. It's relative to a skunk, but far, far worse. The description of it was hilarious.
Ah. Um.
Or no, wait.
I
Memory is the key. That will tug on the heartstrings of a few people that know that reference.
mm,
It's
I
a pretty. It's an
I'm
impactful
not used
phrase.
to. I'm not used to being the guy that doesn't get the reference jokes. Damn it! I'm out of the loop on this one.
Yeah, it's weird it's weird that the roles were reversed.
Yeah, I'm usually the one shaming you for not getting the references.
Unlike you, I'm
I
not going to shame
suppose
you.
we could do. I suppose we could do a red versus blue Nana.
That's a bit of a mouthful, don't you think?
This is true.
You know what, let's just stick with
Just
banana
bananas,
because
and
I
I
feel like,
suppose.
yeah, I guess banana will work because you don't know shit.
Hmm?
You don't know shit.
I don't. I am
Okay.
entirely out of the loop on this one.
All right. So
My point of reference for this era of the internet is that guy with the glasses, mostly.
I always forget that you're a little older. So yeah,
4 years. 4
yeah.
years. And even then, to be fair, I didn't really get into that guy with the glasses until my college days when my roommate showed it to me.
hmm
Then
Uh,
again, if it weren't for my roommate showing that to me, I probably wouldn't be doing this. So swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
yeah. So the guy.
It's funny. Back in the day, I really wanted to be part of that guy with the glasses, and then like right as I would have auditioned for it was when all the change the channel stuff happened, and everything blew up. So it's
Um.
sort of sad
So
that everything I touch dies, but there it is.
okay. So you can see it, right?
No, I'm going to have to jump out and jump back in. It's doing the
Buffer.
perpetual buffering wheel of doom. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I kind of wish someone else was here. Hmm.
Now I can see it. It's fine. Hello? Hello? You there, brainstormer?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I think it was getting a little slow on my end. I didn't know that. Okay. So
Okay,
can you see it
but
now?
yeah, I can see it fine.
Oh,
So
all right. So these two are some of the original creators / founders of Rooster Teeth and Red vs. Blue. Um, got what would it be on yours? I'm trying to think. Guy on your, the guy in blue
hmm
is Matt Hullum, who's directing this season, and the guy with the hat is Bernie Burns.
but by the way, that blue shirt is very nice. I want that shirt now.
Uh, yeah, Bernie Burns, who is writing this season, and since he kind of was the original writer of the series, um, kind of would make sense that he kind of helps end it, I suppose. Which it does kind of suck. I'm gonna admit again because um,
And again, I'm sure Bernie is like a stage name short for like Bernard or something, but it's still some badass naming convention type shit.
Michael Justin Bernie Burns, as his full name.
Yeah. Oh well. Slightly less badass knowing that it's just a nickname and not even a shortened name, but still awesome.
Um,
Wait, is his middle name Justin or Justice? Because
Justin.
okay, I was gonna get because it sounded like you said Justice there for a second. I was like, okay, we might be back to badass naming conventions territory if that were the case.
Um,
Anyway,
what I was
moving
gonna
on.
say was, it does kind of suck that Red vs. Blue is ending because the the creators had said beforehand, like years ago, that if people still wanted RVB, if they wanted more RVB, they'd keep making more RVB.
hmm
Granted,
Um,
I guess issue
sorry.
wise,
Go ahead.
huh?
Nothing. Go ahead. I'll
I,
say it after you're done.
I was just gonna say, granted, the issue that would come up with that is obviously the quality control,
hmm
which became very evident with like seasons 15 to 18.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, what I was going to say, and I just noticed this. It's a real shame Bernie didn't think ahead and wear a red shirt, because then it could have literally been red versus blue.
well, they got the curtain doing
Yeah,
that, so
the curtain's red on that side, but it's just like it's just
it would have been
ma-
funny. Actually, hold on. What would actually be super funny because you obviously don't know this. It would have been funny that Matt was wearing blue and Bernie was wearing red because, respectively, in the show they voice opposite colors in opposite the voice characters in opposite colors. So that would have been funny from an ironic standpoint. I do agree. It would have been nicer if he wore red.
yeah, but yeah, theming, guys. Think ahead. Maybe, and I'm now going to say something that makes me sound like an absolute dick. But maybe if y'all thought ahead to this kind of theming more often, the company wouldn't have gone bust. I
Oh,
realize, of course, that makes me seem like a dick, and I will slap myself accordingly.
well,
There.
that and I mean to be fair, there were so many issues behind the scenes, from like scandals, like spousal. Apparently, some people cheated on their wives with younger fans. Um,
Yep. I am also familiar with this particular part of that era internet drama.
oh no,
And for those
this was like 4 or 5 years ago. Really recently.
but yeah. Same thing with the change the channel document that
Mhm.
ruined that guy with the glasses pretty much.
Yeah.
Um
Uh,
long story short, among many other things, um apparently the production on the anniversary movies were absolute hell to deal with because of the egos involved, and apparently one of the contributors to the site who his real name was Justin Carmichael, but his reviewer name was Juario. He apparently had gotten in trouble a couple of times for making his younger female fans feel awkward, and there were Me Too related accusations accordingly.
And anyway, it's only a minute 30 long.
Banana.
Hi, I am Bertie Burns, the writer of Red vs. Blue.
And I'm Matt Hullum, the director of Red vs. Blue Restoration, the final chapter in the Red vs. Blue saga. And here, just for you, is the trailer.
Enjoy. But it's also for other people. Not just
Yes,
me.
you can pass it along, share it. There's a share button, I'm sure, on there. Just click that.
Okay, I like the dynamic between these two. Well done, guys.
Oh no, the original one.
Still would have been funnier if one of you were wearing a red shirt, though.
The original, like, people, a lot of like the big names of Rooster Teeth are actually like really comedic and funny people. It's just, again, it's a whole thing. We'd be here all night if I had to try and go through it.
Again,
Granted,
internet dramas and fevered egos. It happens, especially during this particular era of the internet.
yeah.
I'm honestly surprised there's not more internet drama related to Teen 4-Star, actually.
Well, they honest. To be fair, I feel like there's a big wide of difference with them and other internet like companies.
I mean, not maybe more so now because a lot of them have literally gotten into the video game or anime dubbing industry, but back then, like for example, many times, I believe it was Little Karibo crossed over with that guy with the glasses contributors and stuff. So the lines aren't as defined as you would think of that era of e-celebrity.
Well, I also think Team Forcer, because I've watched like the behind the scenes stuff when they talk about like their DBZ Abridged. I know you refuse to watch that for a lot of things.
I don't want it to ruin the magic. Every time I've listened to creators explain why they did things, it always ends up being because of selfish bullshit that I hadn't conceived of, and it always ruins the shit. So
I personally think it improves it because like it gives me, to be fair, I look at it from both an editing, writer, and I look at it from a different standpoint than you do, I think. But
I'm sick of authorial intent ruining shit, so I don't wanna anymore.
I don't think
I don't give a shit the personal bullshit reasons why you do things. Just give me good shit. That's where I'm at with it.
Well, I think you're wrong, given that I've watched all their videos of their coverage. Like
they might be the exception, and if so, good for them. And they seem like the kind of people who might be the exception. But I have been burned by authorial intent so many times, ruining shit retroactively, that I just don't want it anymore.
Okay. Still think you're wrong. But what I was going to say is, from what I gather of watching those, over the 100 videos they did, they come off across as a little more humble than I would say some other e-celebrities do.
And that's definitely good, and I definitely enjoy that. It's just I've been burned so many times.
Okay, I'm not trying to convince you, Dalton, and I'm just saying my perspective on the matter.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm just gonna stick to my fuck authorial intent position because it's better for enjoyment, if nothing else.
I was also gonna say, like, I do think somewhat egos kind of were also led to a somewhat downfall of Rooster Teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Banana.
One last adventure, Griff. Been nice knowing you, Simmons. So here's the deal, Reds. We have a problem. A big problem. If we're going to survive it, we have to work together. Nada! Nada!
I've been waiting for you. Well, your wait is over, Chrome Dome. Charge!
Okay. So I do have a few things to mention. It's not really a gripe or anything. It could be construed as that, but it to me it seems a little weird that they're going with the Halo Infinite art style when this is supposed to be taking place after season 13, which used Halo 4 art style.
They might explain it. It might have something to do with the retcon of fixing the shit that you don't like.
No, if they're retconning it though, that would still make them have to do season 13 because it's supposed to take place immediately after season 13, which used Halo 4 as the machinima format.
Again, they might explain it. Who knows?
They're probably not going to explain it very well. I'm going to be fully honest.
I sympathize with your nitpick. I'm just pointing out that it might have an explanation. I don't know if it will be a good one. I expect to hear your feedback when you see this eventually, but it might have an
I was also
explanation.
going to point out, to be fair, I was also going to point out the animation. To be fair, it did kind of have a downgrade after Montium stopped working on, worked on Ruby, started working on his own thing and stuff. Which, but mainly I was just going to talk cinematicness of it all. Like, this feels like the lighting and stuff here feels very flat, very almost pre-viz. That's pre-visualization. If people didn't know that, it's more or less it how to best put this. It's like the prototype to the final product. And
so
it just
put it in another context. It seems to you like they basically animated the storyboards, because like in classical animation, that's kind of the equivalent of that is when they start animating the storyboards.
Basically, yeah. And I mean, it looks like obviously they got budget increase with like the stuff, but it doesn't, like, the animation looks fluid. Like, I think they're doing mocap, which is cool.
I mean, given that the entire company that used to make this went belly up before they made this.
No, they didn't. This was announced before the shut, like months upon months. Before, because we covered the first trailer.
Well, they might still be they might have still been dealing with that kind of stuff behind the scenes. So
I don't know. Mainly because they've also had, because it's been years since season 18, so they've had time to work on this. So I'm a little miffed. I'm not gonna say, like, I'm not trying to be negative. I don't like being negative, but with everything I'm seeing right now, it just feels a bit. And to be fair, Red vs. Blue has always done fairly generic trailers for their seasons. And obviously this is clearly generic. which,
Mhm.
to be fair, again, Red versus Blue has always tried to be the not subvert the stuff,
Mhm.
because it's satire. It's basically satire, right? It's comedy
Mhm.
series first. I don't know. It feels a bit off to me,
Mhm. And I don't really have a point of reference either way, so I'm just gonna take your word for it on this one, because I don't foresee me, even if I was to get into it, I don't foresee me binging, 21 years of content just to catch up on
Oh
this.
no,
So,
again, like at most you would have to season 6 to 13 would be the best thing, mainly because that has a lot of the story element that would be used here.
mm. But in any case, I think I just have to accept that I missed the boat on this one, and
A little
thereby
bit.
take your word for it, because
Um,
like I said, my point of reference for this era of online content, e-celebrity type stuff, is that guy with the glasses. So
anyway,
that's just gonna have to be my cross to bear, or my cross to bears. Never mind.
right.
Anyway,
Uh, anyway, banana.
banana.
Okay, there's one last story to tell. The mission's over. We failed. He won't stop. He'll kill us all. Listen to me.
We have to do something. Otherwise, what is all this for? Why are we here?
I feel like that line was slightly meta, referring to the whole series in
Oh no,
general as well.
no. Why Are We Here is like it was like said in the first episode of the show, like way back when, and it's just kind of been a prevailing idea throughout the whole show of like,
Ah, interesting.
it might have that
Anyway.
context that you're thinking of, but the Why Are We Here thing, it's like I feel like I do have to explain
I was
this.
more referring to the line, but I was more referring to the line before it. That it all has to mean something. One.
Yeah.
I could easily see that being the ethos behind making this in the first place, especially if they also knew that the wheels were coming off of Rooster Teeth itself as a company while they were doing this.
Mm.
Anyway,
Uh,
banana. Unless you have anything to say, because obviously, as we've established, I don't really have much to say other than this really isn't my thing.
well, I was gonna say, well, I made it no secret that I'm doing a Ruby rewrite thing,
Hmm.
but I'm also doing a Red versus Blue spin-off rewrite deal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
Based,
would
I mean, I
like
did
to say that I was surprised, but I know you too well, and I know how your brain works, so this does not surprise me at
To be
all.
fair, to be fair, I had the idea when I first watched like the Red versus Blue Zero, which was kind of supposed to be a spin-off deal, but it never got any traction because they did a lot. I think I once described it. Well, I looked up on its wiki, and it said that it was trying to be a Saturday morning cartoon, like Fast and the Furious elements and stuff. But it never really worked because the characters never came across as interesting, or they didn't develop. Again, it was a whole lot animation wise because it had a guy who did like the animations for Death Battle. Like he was like one of those directors for that.
Mhm.
But that's mainly all the whole bunch of fight
Mm.
and never really had a story.
I wouldn't have minded watching this as a Saturday morning cartoon as a kid if it had been on terrestrial TV. It has
Oh
almost
no,
Code
no,
Lyoko
dude,
vibes.
no. It's to be fair, they curse a lot. It's very crude and crass, and
Okay, so it would have been an Adult Swim show rather than a cartoon.
Probably. Actually, it was on TV for a bit. Like reruns of it. I don't know if you know this network, but the El Rey network.
Oh yeah, they had the rights to rerun Constantine 2014 for a while there.
Yeah, I don't know what I think that network went down. After a few years, which kind of sucks.
I think it just collapsed due to lack of funding because it was kind of the like Mesoamerican network more or less, which I
Which-
didn't know that like Constantine 20 NBC's Constantine was that big among like the Hispanic population, but apparently it was because it was apparently a huge deal when they got the rights to rerun Constantine.
Robert Rodriguez worked on that network as well. Like he made Dusk Till Dawn the series, which is cool. That was also a show I watched called Lucha Underground. But yeah, I guess it collapsed. Definitely.
I remember seeing like ads for that and reruns of that when I found out they were rerunning Constantine, because god damn it, someone needed to give Constantine a fucking second chance, which I suppose there were like touches of Catholicism in Constantine, so I could see that being I could see that appealing to the like Hispanic market.
But yeah, it's again, this'll. Well, I have faith that the original creators can make something cool. It still feels like this is a bit too late.
Mm.
The 13th season came out. Hold on, I'm gonna look that up real quick because I want to say a decade ago, but I could be wrong.
Well, if it came out in 2003, and let's say they had 2 seasons per year, give or take, then yeah, it probably would have been hitting
every year.
Okay, so yeah, around about 20.
Okay, no, okay,
maybe
so
would have been.
April 1st, 2020 to 2015. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. So 2015 to now is 9 years almost.
Yeah. And in those 9 years, we got a lot of less than great stories.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was don't get me wrong, I like sometimes spin-offs and like because that gives you a way to explore the universe through a different lens. Plus and I did do a video of it that I've kind of expounded upon in just my writing itself, like from my old channel Brainstorm Pop Culture. It was like the last video I did, which was rewriting Red versus Blue Zero, and it kind of spiraled off into a full franchise with those characters. And to be fair, I didn't really do much per se. I just either added in some original characters that could help flesh it out, and also just expounded on the ideas. Because again, I'm always under the impression that there's no bad idea, just poor execution. Though I did rewrite the villains, so a bit, so they work better in the story I had.
Interesting. Anyway, Banana?
Yeah. 30 seconds left, so. All right.
Banana.
It was not so damned annoying.
Ooh, a video.
What's up, guys? It's your boy Epsilon back with another video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel.
Obviously, they're making fun of it. I get it.
The influencer sort of joke at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That last part seemed really unnecessary. Does anyone else kind of hate the future?
yes, we do.
Okay. So yeah, again, it's weird. I don't hate it, but I also it's not like I feel like I should be more emotional, but I feel nothing
Mhm.
really.
Well, it's
I'm sad that it's ending, obviously.
part of the problem is just how long it's been, time-wise. Like for example, even though Invader Zim Enter the Florist was a really good sort of final ending to Invader Zim, it also came out like 20 years after the original. Same thing with the Hey Arnold Jungle movie and so on. So some of it is just if you haven't been keeping up with this franchise for almost a decade, it is going to feel a little bit jarring when it comes back.
Yeah. I mean, it has. I mean, no, it's not even. It's not that it's been gone for like a decade or so. The last season, I believe. Hold on, I'll look that up because I can't remember. It came out a few years ago. I know that.
Mm.
Hold on. November 9th, 2020.
Mm. But what I meant was if it's been almost 9 years since you kept up with it, as in since you
No,
really
I
paid that
kept up
much
with it.
attention to it.
No, it's no, I kept up with all of it. I just uh, with each season after it, I just kept losing more and more interest because it's kind of like with Rui, obviously it's just like the quality wasn't really there in terms of like
The
the
look how they massacred my boy impulse.
no, not even that. Just bored, really.
Mm.
I was bored watching it.
That's almost worse because at least a train wreck can be an interesting train wreck, whereas if it just becomes a chore, that's almost worse.
Also, what I find weird is that not many people were talking about Red versus Blue. It's mostly been Ruby, and granted, that popped off really crazy.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yeah.
you
So
never can tell what idea is going to be the one to hit it big. Who knows?
I mean, Red vs. Blue was pretty big. Though, granted, I guess more so in the circles of people who actually watched it more so. So,
Well, it's also been since 2003, so
and it stayed
it's a
pretty
completely
consistent up
different era
until,
of the internet.
and again, it stayed pretty consistent up until, 2015. So,
Hmm. It happened, and
all right,
then it starts going downhill, and then you wonder, how did this happen? Who is responsible for this,
eh.
etc.
Anyway, so with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom and fuck off.